You're waking up in a mud brick hut, if waking up is even the right word. More like your eyes snap open, startled by a nightmare that turns out to be your actual life. There's no cozy mattress, no sheets, no pillow gently cradling your head. Just woven reeds, flattened by years of tired bodies, probably some ancestors of yours, pressing their exhaustion deep into these unforgiving fibers. And insects? Oh, you bet. They're not your roommates, you're their breakfast. You feel it immediately, a biting sensation crawling up your leg. Is it lice, fleas, beetles, maybe a scorpion if you're really unlucky? You scratch, but it's useless. You've learned to live with this constant itching, like background noise you can't silence. Your skin, now a roadmap of bites and bumps, tells a story you wish you hadn't lived. But here you are, stuck in ancient Egypt, wondering how humanity survived long enough to invent something as miraculous as bug spray, something you'll sadly never know. As you sit up, your muscles ache like they're protesting against the very idea of movement. You slept, but you didn't rest. Rest implies comfort, implies rejuvenation, none of which are present here. Instead, you've spent the night tossing and turning, trying to find a position slightly less miserable than the last. Spoiler alert, you failed. And then there's the heat. Even at dawn, the air is thick and oppressive, heavy enough that every breath feels like work. Your hut is dark, made from mud bricks baked beneath an unforgiving sun, a sun that never really leaves, even at night. Inside, the walls radiate heat, as though they absorbed yesterday's blazing sunlight and saved it up just to torment you now. Sweat coats your skin, a grimy layer that never fully washes off. Water is scarce, precious, too important to waste on luxuries like washing. As your eyes adjust to the dim morning light filtering through tiny slits in the walls, you realize you're breathing more than air. You're inhaling dust, dried grass fragments, and whatever that suspicious, musty smell might be. Spoiler, probably mold, mildew, or something worse. You cough, but it's routine by now. Your lungs have learned to survive on less oxygen and more despair. Around you, the soundscape wakes up too, flies buzzing hungrily near your ears, a distant donkey braying as miserably as you feel, and neighbors shuffling around, already beginning the daily grind. Privacy, another fantasy. Your hut, more gap than wall, doesn't shield you from noise or the prying eyes of curious neighbors. Everyone lives like this, tangled together in a messy tapestry of shared misery. There's no dignity, only endurance. Your feet hit the dirt floor, cool for only a fleeting second before it reminds you of your poverty. Packed earth, beaten down by countless footsteps, uneven and unforgiving. It promises splinters, sharp stones, bits of broken pottery embedded just deep enough to make you wince but not bleed. Not yet, anyway. You stare down at your hands, roughened and calloused, already anticipating today's labor, fields to tend, mud bricks to form, water to haul from a distant river teeming with crocodiles that wouldn't mind turning you into breakfast. You sigh, resigning yourself to a life where every sunrise isn't hope, it's merely a signal that survival must begin again. Ancient Egypt isn't just history, it's endurance. It's daily suffering turned routine, a reminder that survival was once humanity's greatest achievement. You rub your eyes, stretch your stiffened back, and prepare to step outside into a world that's determined to test your limits yet again. Welcome to another day in ancient Egypt. You wouldn't last here, but somehow they did. Morning hits you hard in ancient Egypt, not gently like sunlight filtering through curtains, but like a sweaty palm slapping you awake. Your eyes creak open slowly, reluctant to greet another scorching dawn, another day battling the ruthless Egyptian sun. Before you've even fully registered consciousness, you're enveloped in a thick, suffocating heat that never really went away. It waited patiently overnight, lurking in the mud brick walls, seeping from every crack, every inch of baked earth, eager to wrap around you like a cruel embrace. Sweat beads immediately on your forehead, rolling down your temples and tracing salty paths into your eyes. Blinking doesn't help. You've already got sand stuck in there from yesterday. A gritty reminder that the desert invades everything, including your body. Your throat feels raw, parched, like you swallowed sandpaper rather than dinner. Water, so desperately needed, isn't waiting on your bedside table. There is no bedside table. Just you, gasping for moisture, counting down hours until you can sip something other than your own recycled breath. Flies buzz angrily around you, thick clouds of tiny wings darting at your ears, your nose, your open mouth. They thrive in this stale, sweltering air, drawn by the sweat and grime clinging stubbornly to your skin. They're relentless, unafraid of your futile swatting, unbothered by curses muttered under your breath. You inhale sharply, accidentally swallowing a fly or two, a quick burst of panic replaced by weary resignation. After all, you've learned to coexist with insects. They've claimed your hut, your food, your very existence. You sit upright, and the stale air hits you anew, heavy, musty, thickened with smoke from last night's dying fire and whatever else lingers in this cramped, mud-plastered cell. It clings to your lungs, weighing them down with every breath, as though every inhale must be earned. This air has history. It's been breathed and rebreathed countless times, passed between you and your family, carrying whispers, coughs, laughter, and sighs. It has seen births, deaths, moments of tenderness, and moments of despair, all mixed together into one dense, oppressive cloud. As you shift, dust rises from beneath you like tiny ghosts dancing in the half-light. It settles on your lips, coats your tongue, gritty and bitter, reminding you again that the desert reigns supreme here. Dust infiltrates everything: your clothes, your hair, your bed, your dreams. You breathe it in deeply, not by choice, but necessity. It's your daily communion, your unholy ritual, a constant reminder that comfort doesn't exist, only varying degrees of discomfort. You stretch limbs stiff from another restless night, joints creaking like ancient hinges. Each movement stirs more dust, more heat, more flies, more evidence that you're not welcome here, merely tolerated by the elements until they finally wear you down. A sharp sting on your ankle jolts you awake fully, another insect bite, another badge of survival earned through discomfort. Through cracks in the mud wall, harsh streaks of daylight pierce the gloom, illuminating swirling dust particles dancing lazily, mocking your exhaustion. Outside, the world awakens, too. The distant calls of livestock, the rhythmic pounding of workers already shaping mud bricks beneath the rising sun, children crying, mothers scolding. Your ears fill with life's noisy, abrasive soundtrack, each sound blending into a harsh symphony of survival. You close your eyes for one last brief moment, pretending things might be different today. Maybe the sun won't scorch so fiercely. Maybe the flies will find someone else. Maybe you'll find relief from the dust, choked air, but reality settles in quickly. You exhale slowly, accepting once again your daily fate, battling heat, flies, stale air, and ever-present dust. This is your morning in ancient Egypt. There's no comfort here, only survival. You're awake, but barely. The kind of awake that hurts. The kind of awake where your tongue feels like a slab of raw leather sunbaked onto the roof of your mouth. You try to swallow, and your throat folds in on itself like crumpled papyrus. It doesn't work. There's no moisture left, not a drop. Just air, hot, dry, stale air that scratches its way down your windpipe like it has something personal against you. Your first thought isn't food, or danger, or even how you'll get through the day. It's thirst, immediate, violent, all-consuming. A thirst that doesn't politely tap your shoulder. It grabs you by the jaw and demands attention. And you've learned by now, you don't ignore it. Because in ancient Egypt, thirst isn't an inconvenience. It's a death sentence in slow motion. The desert doesn't care. It doesn't blink. The sun is already rising with malicious intent, climbing the sky like a god with a grudge, and you can feel the moisture being pulled out of your skin by sheer proximity. You're sweating before you've even moved, and the sweat doesn't cool you, it betrays you. It leaves your body in tiny, shimmering droplets, evaporates before it finishes forming, and takes your last traces of hydration with it. You are drying out like old bread left in the open, cracked and forgotten. And here's the cruel twist. There's water. Technically, the Nile is right there. You can see it, hear it. You even hauled 2 jars of it yesterday, each one sloshing heavy against your hips as you trudged half a mile barefoot through the sun-baked sand. But that water, it's not safe, not really. It's not cold or clean or even particularly wet in the way you want. It's muddy, murky, swarming with things you can't see but definitely don't want to know about. It's life and death in liquid form. It might save you. It might kill you. And that's the gamble you play every time you bring the jar to your lips. You remember what happened to Kibi 2 weeks ago. Strong, sun-darkened, never complained Kibi. She drank too fast, too deep, didn't bother boiling at first. 3 days later, she was gone. Buried in the sand behind the huts while her mother sobbed, and the rest of you looked away, because you knew it could have been any of you. Any day, any drink. So you hesitate. You hold the cup, your cracked fingers trembling. You sniff it, like that'll help. The scent is metallic, earthy, tinged with algae and heat, but your body doesn't care. It begs. Your lips are splitting at the corners. Your gums feel like someone scrubbed them with sand. Your stomach clenches, not from hunger, but from the desperate need for something cool, something wet, something alive. Instead, you take the safer option, beer, not the fun kind, not cold or fizzy or even remotely enjoyable. It's warm, flat, thick with sediment, barely fermented grain juice, made more to kill bacteria than to please the tongue. But it won't kill you, probably. You sip slowly, pretending it helps. It doesn't, but it's something, and something is the currency of survival. By noon, your head will throb, your vision will blur, your legs will feel like straw bundles tied together with string, and you'll know, once again, that thirst isn't something you feel. It's something you become, a walking, parched apology, a human raisin in linen rags, and all the while, the sun watches, the sand whispers, the wind laughs. Because in ancient Egypt, your biggest enemy isn't war or plague or snakes, it's thirst. And it always wakes up before you do. Morning in ancient Egypt doesn't start with a yawn. It starts with survival, the kind that arrives hot and immediate, settling on your shoulders before your feet even hit the dirt. There's no coffee, no cold shower, no 5-minute scroll on your read paper TikTok equivalent, just heat, hunger, and thirst so sharp it feels like punishment for a crime you're not sure you committed. So how do you handle it? How does anyone start their day when the first breath tastes like dust and regret? Simple. Beer. Not water. Never water. Not first thing. Because water, despite being the only thing your body is screaming for, might kill you. It looks refreshing, shimmering in clay pots near the door, sloshing with deceptive innocence. But it's a microbial minefield. The Nile is sacred, yes. Beautiful, yes. But also full of bacteria, parasites, crocodile backwash, and the occasional mystery corpse floating a little too close to your village for comfort. You don't trust it. No one does. not raw. Not first thing in the morning. Not if you want to live past breakfast. So instead, you drink what everyone drinks. A warm, cloudy porridge, adjacent brew that tastes like someone forgot how bread works. Ancient Egyptian beer. It's thick, gritty, sometimes chewy, definitely chunky. Made from half-baked loaves crumbled into water and left to ferment into a kind of frothy desperation. It's food and drink in one, breakfast in a cup, not served cold, not served fresh, just served. And if you're lucky, it hasn't spoiled overnight. You sit in the same spot as always, on the edge of your woven mat, surrounded by other yawning, scratching bodies, all cradling their cups like they're sacred relics. Because they are. Not for the taste, not even for the nutrition, but because this is safety. This murky sludge might be the only thing standing between you and a week of diarrhea, dehydration, and an untimely death under the communal date palm. And no, it's not alcoholic in the way modern beer is. It won't get you drunk. Not unless you've downed enough to forget your name, your job, and that the sun is already blazing like it wants to see you burst into flames. But it's just alcoholic enough to kill the invisible things in the water, the things that killed Kebi, the things you pretend not to think about while sipping. Children drink it too, even toddlers. No one blinks, no one gasps. There are no parenting forums debating it. It's not a treat, it's medicine, it's hydration with baggage. The idea of kids drinking anything else would be laughable, if anyone had the energy to laugh before noon. After your first few sips, you feel something close to normal, not refreshed, just stable. Your insides stop screaming, your head stops pulsing, you can stand without the ground swaying. The beer lines your stomach like a soggy blanket and gives your limbs permission to start working again. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. It's sticky, always is. And then it's time. Time to work, time to haul, time to suffer, sweat, repeat. But at least you started the day with something in your belly. Something that won't kill you, probably. In the modern world, beer is celebration, relaxation, a luxury. In ancient Egypt, beer is triage. It's not a drink, it's a lifeline. A warm, soggy toast to not dying before noon. And for you, that's as good as morning gets. Food in ancient Egypt wasn't about comfort. It wasn't about taste. It was about survival, and nothing screamed survival louder than the strange, gritty mash of bread, sand, and whatever your family could scrape together from the Nile. First, there's the bread. The bread. The thing you're supposed to look forward to. The stuff that should sustain you, fill you up after a long day of back-breaking labor. But no, this isn't bakery fresh, pillowy, golden brown goodness. This bread has been beaten, baked, and battered by the unforgiving desert winds. You bite into it, and immediately, your teeth crunch down not on soft dough, but on grains of sand, because no matter how much they need, the Nile just keeps spitting dust into everything. It doesn't just get in the bread, it becomes the bread. You can't escape it. You know you're chewing sand. You know it's in there. Every grain a tiny reminder that Egypt is built on a foundation of dust, death, and destruction. But you swallow anyway. What choice do you have? You have to eat. Your stomach growls louder than your pride. Bread isn't the only thing on the menu, though. No, there's also the onions. The ones that reek of, well, everything, really. The kind of pungency that sticks to your hands, your breath, your very soul. You chop them up, tears streaming down your face, not from sadness, but from the overpowering sting of raw onion oils forcing their way into your sinuses. You throw them into your broth or on top of your bread, thinking, hoping, praying that this will add some semblance of flavor. Onions in ancient Egypt aren't just food, They're a strategy. They're a shield against the unbearable taste of what's to come, a broken promise of flavor. Maybe, just maybe, they'll mask the flavor of whatever that is. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The fish. The fish in ancient Egypt isn't the fresh, tender, flaky wonder you dream of at night. This fish smells wrong, sour, rotten, as if the Nile itself has thrown up. It's been caught, probably 2 days ago, dried out, salted, and now it's hanging in the heat, calling to you like some twisted siren song of desperation. You've grown used to it by now, so used to the pungent aroma that your nose has stopped complaining and your stomach has stopped rejecting it, but every bite is an act of defiance. You tear into the fish, the texture slimy and tough, like chewing on a piece of leather that's been marinated in despair. The salt burns your lips. The taste is metallic, like the air after a storm, only more unbearable. But the fish isn't really the problem. The problem is that it's the one thing you've got that'll keep you going. No one in your village is asking for a second helping. No one's looking at it like it's a delicacy. But when you're hungry enough, the line between edible and poisonous gets really, really blurry. You chew, you swallow. You don't think about the sour aftertaste, the oil that lingers like it has unfinished business with your stomach. You don't think about how your breath will smell for the rest of the day. But it's something real. And in ancient Egypt, where food is scarce and the Nile has no mercy, that's as good as it gets. So, you wash it down with more gritty bread. And when you're done, you wipe your hands on your ragged tunic and look around, noticing the others doing the same. Your neighbors, your family. Everyone is just trying to make it through another day. Everyone is chewing on the same bread, the same onions, the same fish, taking what the Nile gives and pretending it's enough. It isn't enough. You know that. It never will be. But it's food. It's survival. And survival is all that matters when you're living on the edge of existence. Tomorrow, the bread will still be full of sand. The fish will still smell wrong. And the onions will still make your eyes burn. But for today, it'll keep you going. It has to. Because if it doesn't, nothing else will. Imagine this. It's the crack of dawn. The air is thick with heat, and your body is already screaming for relief. The world outside your hut is still cloaked in the heavy, suffocating weight of the desert night, but you know it won't stay cool for long. The heat always wins here, always. It pushes through the cracks in the mud bricks, sneaks through the smallest gap in the door, and soon it has you pinned under its oppressive weight. Your throat is dry, so dry it feels like sandpaper scraping against your insides with every swallow. You blink, trying to clear the fog from your mind, but it's not the sleepiness you're fighting anymore. It's the brutal reality of thirst. The kind of thirst that claws at your insides, a relentless reminder that your body is slowly, imperceptibly, shrinking into a raisin under the harsh sun. Water. You need water. But here's the thing. Water might kill you. That's right. Water. The very thing your body craves, the thing that should be a given, is more dangerous than you'd think. You stare at the clay pot by your bed, filled with the muddy, murky liquid harvested from the Nile, and you hesitate. You don't trust it. No one does. It looks clear enough from the outside, but you've seen it. You've smelled it. The Nile is a life source, sure, but it's also a graveyard for the careless. Crocodiles, bacteria, parasites, the remains of who knows what drifting beneath the surface. The water is teeming with dangers you can't see but know are there. You take a deep breath and reach for something safer. Beer. Now, don't get it twisted. This isn't the cold, refreshing drink you might imagine when you think of cracking open a cold one with the boys. This is ancient Egyptian beer. It's warm. It's thick. It's murky. And it doesn't taste like much except a vague memory of what bread once was. It's made from barley, soaked and fermented into a porridge-like sludge, and then you drink it. It's not a luxury, it's not a treat, it's a lifeline. But why is it safer than water? Because beer is fermented, which means the alcohol kills the very things in the water that could make you sick. This isn't a choice, it's survival. In the time before refrigeration, before sanitation, and long before modern science, fermentation was nature's way of protecting you from the invisible enemies lurking in every sip of raw water. The alcohol in beer isn't enough to get you drunk, but it's just enough to sanitize the liquid. It's the difference between life and death when you're staring down a mug of water that could be teeming with diseases you have no way of understanding, let alone fighting. So, you take your first gulp. It's not refreshing, it's gritty and warm, but it's something. It's not going to poison you. It's thick, viscous, and almost sustains you in a way water never could. It coats your throat, fills your belly with a sluggish, uncomfortable warmth, and dulls the edge of your hunger. But most importantly, it keeps you from dying of dehydration before the day even begins. Breakfast beer in ancient Egypt isn't a luxury, it's a desperate necessity. It's a harsh reminder that survival is never glamorous, never kind, never comfortable. You drink it not because you want to, but because without it, you're walking a razor's edge. Without it, you'd be begging for water that might very well rob you of the rest of your life. It's a trade-off. Water is life, but beer, fermented, boiled, and bitter, is survival. You drink your breakfast beer in the quiet of your hut, watching the faint light creeping through the cracks in the walls, the world outside still holding its breath before the full weight of the sun arrives. And you realize, as you sip that lukewarm brew, that this is what survival looks like in ancient Egypt. It's gritty, it's ugly. It's a world where even the simplest need, like drinking something that won't kill you, is a luxury you can't afford to ignore. So no, breakfast beer isn't a party. It's a grim reminder that life in this heat, in this ancient land, is never guaranteed. It's a daily negotiation with death. And right now, this beer is your ally. It keeps you breathing, keeps you moving, and keeps you alive long enough to see the next sunrise. One more brutal day in the relentless desert that refuses to give you mercy. You're hungry, again, which is a cruel joke, honestly, because in ancient Egypt, eating isn't nourishment, it's survival roulette. You're not sitting down for a meal. You're entering negotiations with your stomach, your teeth, and every lurking organism that sees your intestines as prime real estate. The food is simple, basic, predictable. Bread, beer, a little onion, maybe some dried fish if the Nile was generous, or just bloated and careless. But nothing on that plate, if you even have a plate, is safe. Not really. Let's start with the sand. Sand is not a seasoning. It's not an ingredient, but it might as well be, because it's everywhere. The desert doesn't care that you're baking. It doesn't care that your mortar and grain grinder are made of stone. It just shows up. In the wind. In your flour. In your teeth. You bite into a hunk of barley bread and crunch. Not the good kind of crunch. Not toasted. Not crispy. This is grit. Raw. Sharp. Ancient. Every chew is an act of violence against your molars, and not a single person is surprised when a tooth cracks or a chunk chips off into your pottage. That's just the cost of eating. You chew slowly, cautiously, wincing as you go, knowing full well your next bite could send a lightning bolt of pain up into your skull. There's no dentist, no numbing cream, no crown or root canal. Just the endless throb of pain, day after day, while infection quietly moves in and sets up shop inside your jawbone. That slight ache you ignored last week, it's swelling now. Your face is puffy, your gums bleed when you drink, and all because you tried to survive on a loaf of bread that doubled as a sand trap. But cracked teeth are a luxury problem compared to what's coming next: parasites. Because that dried fish, it's not cooked, not really. It's salted and left in the sun until it stops moving, which does nothing for the microscopic horror show living inside it. You eat it anyway. Not because you want to, but because you have to. Because you're hungry, and there's not going to be anything else today. So you choke it down, scales, bones, and all, and pray to a god whose statue just watched you dry heave into your own bowl. And then, the waiting begins. It starts small. Your stomach grumbles, then turns. You think it's just bad stew, but then it keeps turning and keeps grumbling. You feel weak, dizzy. You've got chills in the middle of a 100-degree day. Something is definitely living in your guts now. It's squirming, multiplying, making plans. Because those parasites, they've been through this before. You haven't. You try herbs. You try prayers. You even try eating charcoal because your grandmother swore it dries the devil inside. Nothing helps. You stop sleeping. You stop working. You stop standing. And nobody can help you because everybody's been through it or is going through it right now. Food should heal you, sustain you. But in ancient Egypt, food betrays you. It betrays you with hidden eggs, microscopic larvae, and bacteria so tenacious it might outlive you by several generations. It betrays you with dull tools, sandy flour, and fish you're pretty sure was already dead when it was caught. You eat because you must. But every bite is a gamble, and the house always wins eventually. So when you see that loaf of bread, steaming slightly in the morning heat, your mouth waters and your stomach recoils. You know the cost. The bread will hurt. The fish will betray you. The onion will burn. And somewhere inside, a tiny, unwelcome squatter will begin unpacking its bags. But you'll still eat, because there's no choice. Because in ancient Egypt, hunger is brutal. But eating might be worse. Let's take a moment, a brief, painful, slightly bitter aside, to talk about how the other half lived, or rather, how they feasted. Because while you, the dusty, sun-cracked, bug-bitten peasant, are gnawing on salted fish jerky and praying today's bread doesn't break another tooth, the Pharaoh, he's dining like a demigod. No, seriously, he's not just sitting down to eat. He's ascending into a full-blown culinary ceremony, surrounded by gold, servants, and enough food to make the Nile blush. You eat kneeling on a dirt floor next to a chicken who's eyeing your onion with alarming focus. The Pharaoh, he reclines, draped in linens worth more than your entire village, shaded, fanned, hand-fed, if he feels like being particularly royal that day. Let's break it down. You've got bread, gritty, dense, infested with the taste of sand and survival. The Pharaoh, his bread is refined, literally. The wheat is sifted, ground on finer stones, and baked by someone who actually knows what they're doing. No sand. No broken teeth. Just soft, fresh loaves likely kissed by a priest before being placed in a golden basket. Your beer? Sludge. Warm. Cloudy. More oat soup than drink. His beer? Light. Chilled in clay jars, stored in cool cellars. Served in elegant cups etched with prayers to gods you've never even heard of. And let's not even get started on wine, because yes, he has wine, imported, stored, reserved for moments of divine indulgence while you're chewing on roasted barley husks and calling it dinner. The Pharaoh eats meat, regularly, casually, like it's not a life-altering event. Roasted duck, spiced goose, lamb seasoned with honey and herbs. Not dried, not salted into jerky, not eaten 3 days too late after a questionable smell test. Fresh, tender, cooked by someone who doesn't cough directly into the pot. You get fish, if you're lucky, the kind of fish that looks like it died twice and then got sun-dried into a state of edible denial. It flakes wrong, it smells worse, and you're never quite sure if what you're eating is food or a symptom. The Pharaoh has fruit. Let that sink in. Fruit, figs, dates, grapes, melons, cold, sweet, juicy, the kind of food that reminds you the world can be good sometimes. Meanwhile, the only thing that's sweet in your life is the occasional stale raisin that survived the harvest and didn't get eaten by a rat first. And then there's dessert. You didn't even know that was a thing, did you? The Pharaoh gets honey cakes, with nuts, and maybe even milk if the cows are cooperating. Meanwhile, you're licking the inside of your wooden bowl and pretending the onion bits count as a treat. He eats off plates, real ones, painted, glazed, clean. You eat out of a shared bowl, if there even is a bowl. Half the time you're eating with your fingers, bent over a splintered board, trying not to get elbowed by your cousin or stepped on by the goat who lives in your house. You eat because you're trying not to die. He eats because he's pretending to be a god. You chew while crouched in the dirt, and he dines while being serenaded by harpists and smeared in perfumed oils. And you know what the worst part is? You'll never taste his food. You'll never smell the honey cakes or sip the imported wine. You'll never know what it's like to feel full without guilt, because you're not royalty. You're not even close. You're the reason he eats well. Your labor, your sweat, your blood in the fields. You dig, you haul, you starve. And he feasts. So next time someone says, "We all eat the same under the sun," go ahead and laugh. Then go back to your sand bread and pretend it tastes like justice. The sun doesn't rise in ancient Egypt. It attacks. It doesn't gently warm the earth. It slams into it like a hammer forged by angry gods. There is no morning breeze, no shade, no gentle transition into the day. There's just light and heat and the sudden realization that you're already sweating and the day hasn't even begun to hurt you yet. You're not waking up to a job. You're waking up to a sentence, a daily punishment, the kind of work that starts before sunrise and ends long after your shadow's given up and disappeared. Whether you're hunched in the fields, ankle deep in mud, or dragging massive limestone blocks through the sand for a pharaoh who thinks he'll live forever, the outcome is the same: pain. Let's talk about farming first. You'd think it's peaceful, romantic even, tending the earth, growing crops. But this isn't some postcard of rustic bliss. This is backbreaking. You bend. You dig. You haul water by hand from a river that stinks of algae and crocodile piss. Your fingers blister. Your shoulders scream. The soil is dry, cracked, and resentful. It only yields if you bribe it with blood and tears. And even then, only maybe. You're out there barefoot, by the way. Not because you want to feel the land or whatever poetic nonsense modern people imagine. You're barefoot because shoes are expensive and you're not important enough to own more than a splintered clog and a hope. The dirt burns your soles. The stubble cuts your skin. Every step is a negotiation with sharp rocks, beetles, and buried regret. And yet, somehow, that's the easier job. Because if you're not a farmer, you might be a laborer, one of thousands building monuments to men who thought they were gods, pyramids, temples, statues the size of small villages. You're not a worker. You're a gear in an ego machine that grinds through lives like it's chewing gravel. There's no safety gear, no rest breaks, no labor laws, just whips, commands, and the rhythmic chant of overseers who don't care if your spine gives out mid-haul, as long as the block keeps moving. You drag limestone on sledges over sand so hot it hisses underfoot. You sweat until there's nothing left, then keep going. Because stopping means punishment, and punishment means pain. More pain than you already have, which feels impossible until it isn't. Your back is permanently curved, your hands calloused, cracked, swollen. Your skin peels from the heat, then burns again the next day. You get one meal, maybe two. Beer so thick it counts as food. Bread so hard it counts as a weapon. You scarf it down in the shade of whatever you can find, often just your own shadow, and pray that your stomach stops aching long enough to lift again. The sun doesn't just burn, it drains. It hollows you out. You can feel your energy leak out of your pores with every swing of the pick, every shove of the cart. There's no finish line. No weekend, no pay, just quotas, blocks to be laid, fields to be flooded, pharaohs to be pleased. And every now and then someone collapses, from heat, from exhaustion, from nothing at all. They just stop. And the others, they step around him. Maybe they whisper a prayer. Maybe they don't, because if they stop, they'll be next. This isn't a job, it's a war. Between you and the sun, between your will and your body, between the life you were given and the one someone else carved out of stone and told you to carry. And the worst part? Tomorrow, you'll do it again, and the day after that, and the day after that, because the work never ends. But you will. You don't have tools. You have suggestions, objects that vaguely resemble help until they snap in your hands and leave you cursing the gods and everything made of copper. Because in ancient Egypt, the tools don't work with you, they work against you. And they break, constantly. Your shovel? It's not a shovel. Not the sturdy, steel-headed, rubber-gripped miracle you're picturing. It's a flat chunk of wood, unevenly carved, tied to a brittle stick with animal sinew that was already rotting when you got it. It splinters, it bends. Sometimes it just decides it's done and crumbles mid-swing. And when that happens, guess what? You don't get a new one. You get blamed. So you fix it, badly, with rope and prayer. You jam pieces back together and hope it survives another few hours. It won't. But hope is cheaper than replacement, and you're not worth the material it would take to start from scratch. You keep digging, and sweating, and swearing under your breath like that'll hold the thing together. Then there's copper, the height of your technological era, the great innovation. Except, spoiler, it's soft, useless against stone. Laughably ineffective when you're chipping at granite that hasn't moved in 3 million years and has no intention of cooperating now. You strike once, twice, and by the third swing, the edge is bent like a wilted flower. You hammer it straight again on a rock, because that's the only repair station you've got. You carry a chisel that's seen better centuries. You hold it like it owes you something, and maybe it does, because it's the only thing between you and the next 10 hours of pure, bone-jarring tedium. You tap it with a mallet made from petrified optimism and pretend it's doing something. It's not really. The rock laughs, the copper cries. You keep tapping. And every tool, every single one, adds more pain than it relieves. The handles are rough, blistering your palms with every movement. You try wrapping them in cloth, but the sweat soaks through, and now you've got slippery wood coated in ancient bacteria and your own blood. You can't grip, you can't stop, you keep going. Nothing is ergonomic. No one's designed these for comfort. No one even knows what comfort is. There are no blacksmiths with blueprints. Just someone slightly less tired than you, carving sticks into barely functional shapes and tossing them at you like, "Here, try this." And you do, and it breaks, and they shrug. You don't get spares. You get guilt. If something breaks, it's your fault. You must have used it wrong, swung too hard, dug too deep. Never mind that you've worn the same chisel for months, and it's duller than your cousin who talks to goats. You get punished for failing to make a miracle out of junk. And you know what makes it worse? Watching the overseers. They're standing there, hands clean, arms crossed, judging your progress. They don't swing anything. They don't chip or dig or carry. But they do point out when your tool snaps in half, like it's a personal flaw. Why'd you break it? Why aren't you finished? Why does it take so long? Because the tools are garbage, that's why. You're chiseling the bones of the earth with copper dreams and wooden lies, and somehow they expect results. You look at the jagged handle in your hand, you sigh, you pick up the other half, you tie them together, again, and you swing. Because broken tools are still tools, and work doesn't stop for excuses, even the valid ones. Especially the valid ones. There is no sunscreen in ancient Egypt. No SPF 50, no soothing aloe gel, no coconut-scented lotion in a beach tote with cute sunglasses. There is only sun, and you, and whatever you can smear on your skin to convince yourself you're not being slow roasted by the eye of Ra himself. Because make no mistake, the sun isn't just hot here, it's hostile. It's personal. It doesn't just burn. It boils. It blisters. It peels. It scorches your skin until you smell like regret. And there's no escape, no shade, no relief. Just the same brutal, unrelenting fireball hanging over your life every single day, from the moment you wake up in a mud brick oven until the second you collapse back into it. So what do? You cover up. Badly. You wrap what little linen you have around your arms, your head, your neck. But the fabric is thin, sun-bleached, and frayed from 1,000 washings in dirty water. It blocks just enough sunlight to tease you with the idea of protection, but not enough to stop the burn from crawling under your clothes and setting up camp in your bones. And your skin, it's dry, cracked, covered in a film of dust, sweat, and failure. The heat doesn't just sting, it drains you. Your body loses moisture faster than you can replace it, and by mid-morning, you're already dizzy, your lips split open, and your arms tingling with the early warning signs of another full-body sunburn. So the ancient Egyptians improvised. Desperation, after all, is the mother of invention. And what did they come up with? Animal fat. That's right. You wake up, throw on your ragged tunic, and then reach for a clay jar of grease, cow fat, goose fat, crocodile fat if someone's feeling bold. Whatever's available, whatever hasn't gone rancid yet. It's thick, it's sticky. It smells like death reheated, but it works. Sort of. You smear it across your arms, your chest, your face, not with elegance, not with spa music in the background. With both hands, slapping it on like you're trying to butter yourself before the sun finishes baking you alive, you feel instantly disgusting. The fat clings to every crevice. Flies appear out of nowhere, dozens, maybe hundreds, buzzing toward you like you've declared yourself the official buffet of the insect kingdom. You wipe your hands on your tunic, but it's too late. You are the smell now. And yet, you're grateful, because the fat forms a barrier. Primitive, greasy, revolting, but real. It traps what little moisture you still have. It keeps your skin from cracking wide open like the desert floor. It takes the brunt of the sun's hatred so your flesh doesn't have to. You glisten like an oiled-up offering, and for a few fleeting hours, the sun's wrath slides off your skin instead of sinking into it. Some people mix it with crushed herbs, maybe a bit of ochre, maybe some ground flowers or minerals if they can afford it. Not for scent. No one's under the illusion that you smell better now, but for symbolism. A tiny, futile attempt to beautify something inherently gross. Maybe it pleases the gods. Maybe it wards off evil. Maybe it's just the ancient version of pretending this isn't awful. But it is. It's hot, it's sticky, it's miserable, and it's the best defense you've got. So no, There's no sunscreen. There's no dermatologist-recommended blend. There's just animal fat, sweat, and your own stubborn refusal to turn into a human raisin before sundown. You don't glisten, you suffer. But you suffer a little slower. And in this land of heat and dust and burning stone, that's called winning. There's no word for heat stroke in ancient Egypt, no diagnosis, no urgent care, no icy compress pressed to your forehead while a nurse tells you to breathe. There's just heat and silence, and then someone collapsing face first in the dirt. At first, no one panics, because people fall all the time. They faint, they trip, they crumble under loads of grain or bricks or exhaustion so thick it clings to their ribs. But there's a difference. A terrifying, heart-skipping difference. When it's heat stroke, they don't get back up. That's the risk. That's the price of waking up in this God-forsaken furnace of a country, grabbing your half-broken shovel and stepping into the fire. Let's walk through it. You start your day already sweating, before you've lifted a tool, before you've eaten, before the sun has even cleared the horizon fully. Your skin is leaking, your shirt is soaked, your face is already sticky, and you haven't even done anything yet. Because the sun, it doesn't wait for you to be ready. It begins the slow, merciless process of cooking you from the inside out the moment you leave your hut. Hour 1. You're just hot, miserable but functional. Your legs are moving, your hands are working. You're swinging tools made of splintered wood and bendy copper that bounce with every strike, wasting energy you can't afford to spare. Hour 2. Your head starts to throb. Light stabs your eyes with every glance upward. You squint and keep going, thinking maybe it's just the usual dehydration, but it's not. You had your beer this morning, thick, gritty, and warm as ever, but it wasn't enough. Nothing ever is. You're losing more water than you're replacing, and your body knows it, even if your brain hasn't caught up yet. Hour 3. The dizziness kicks in. The world tilts slightly every time you turn your head. Your heart is beating faster, like it's trying to outrun something. And maybe it is. Maybe it's trying to escape the rising heat that's now swallowing everything, baking the ground beneath you until the very air begins to shimmer. Your tunic sticks to your skin. Your breath feels shallow. Your limbs start to feel wrong, like you're not moving them so much as dragging them through syrup. You tell yourself to push through. Everyone else is. You're not going to be the weak one. You're not going to drop your load and collapse like some spoiled city scribe who's never seen a day of real labor. But your body has other plans, because that's how heat stroke works. It doesn't whisper. It waits. And when it's ready, it hits you like a sandstorm. Fast, brutal, final. You stop sweating. That's the scariest part. The moment your body stops trying to cool you down is the moment you know it's giving up. Your skin goes dry, hot as coals. Your vision blurs. Your legs give out, and just like that, you're on the ground. If you're lucky, someone notices. If you're really lucky, they pour lukewarm water on your head and drag you into whatever patch of shade they can find. But chances are, no one has time to stop. Because the quota hasn't been met. The sun's still climbing, and your still crumpled body isn't reason enough for anyone else to lose their job, or worse. And if you don't die right there, you might wish you had, because there's no coming back fast from heat stroke. No one gives you the day off. There are no sick days in ancient Egypt. You're expected to get back up or get replaced. And being replaced usually comes with a shallow hole in the sand and a handful of half-hearted prayers. So when you wake up and think, it's just another hot day, remember. In ancient Egypt, a hot day could be your last. All it takes is a little sun, a little pride, and one moment too long in the wrong kind of heat. Let's talk about what you're wearing, or rather, what you're not. Because in ancient Egypt, clothing wasn't about style. It wasn't about self-expression or seasonal trends or asking, does this make me look like I've been hauling bricks for 12 hours? Clothing was survival, barely. Just enough fabric to keep the sun from stripping your skin raw and the sand from wedging itself into places best left undescribed. Your daily uniform? One word: linen. Thin, coarse, Sunday bleached to the color of old teeth. It's itchy in the wrong spots and transparent when wet, which is unfortunate because you're constantly drenched in your own sweat. And you'll wear it anyway, every day, until it gives up, falls apart, or fuses permanently with your skin. For men, that means a basic linen kilt or skirt, tied around your waist with a cord that may or may not hold. It rides up, it chafes. It sticks to your thighs like soggy papyrus and leaves everything else very much exposed. There's no such thing as modesty here. There's just heat, fabric rationing, and the harsh economics of cloth. You're not covering yourself because you're modest. You're covering yourself because without it, you fry like a fish on the temple steps. Women wear longer linen shifts, if they're lucky. A simple sheath dress, maybe with 2 shoulder straps. But linen's expensive, and the poorer you are, the less of it you get. So the dress doesn't always reach. It clings, it sags, it tears. If you're a working woman, odds are your dress is already threadbare and held together with patches and willpower. You bend over in the fields, and the sun says hello to everything you hoped it wouldn't. Now let's address the myth: nudity. Modern eyes see statues, wall paintings, bronzed bodies, and nothing but kilts and jewelry, and think, wow, was nudity trendy? Number, it was not fashion, it was desperation. Nudity wasn't a choice, it was what happened when the linen ran out. Or when you couldn't afford the 3 scraps it took to call something a tunic. Or when you were too poor to even pretend to own clothing. Children, usually naked until they hit puberty, not because it's cute, because it's practical. Why waste cloth on someone who's just going to grow out of it, roll in the dirt, and jump in the Nile? So they run barefoot through the dust, skin already toughening into leather under the sun, their heads shaved to stave off lice, except for one ceremonial sidelock that flaps around like an afterthought. And don't think the elite had it that much easier. Yes, they had more linen. Yes, it was softer, whiter, occasionally even pleated, but the temperature didn't care. The sweat didn't care. They still roasted under layers, still reapplied makeup over melting faces, still battled the stink of their own bodies wrapped in long, heat-trapping robes while being fanned by someone less fortunate. Jewelry was the only real extravagance, worn not for beauty, but for protection, scarabs for rebirth, ankhs for life, eyes of Horus to keep the curses away. Because in a world where your only shirt is falling apart and your sandals are made of rope and hope, a shiny amulet might be the closest thing you have to armor. So the next time your shirt feels scratchy, your jeans feel tight, or your hoodie doesn't match your vibe, remember this. You're not in a linen rag sweating through 110-degree heat, praying your skirt doesn't unravel in public. You're not naked because your family couldn't afford 3 square inches of cloth. You're not living in a time where clothing is a luxury and exposure is the norm. In ancient Egypt, your outfit wasn't a choice. It was the line between dignity and sunburn. And some days, the sunburn won. Forget everything you think you know about makeup. This isn't about smoky eyes or contouring. No one here is trying to look cute for a party. In ancient Egypt, makeup wasn't beauty, it was battle armor. And you wore it not to impress, but to survive. Because out here, under the blazing, unforgiving sun, everything wants to eat you. The heat, the wind, the dust, the flies. Oh gods, the flies. Tiny, buzzing, disease-carrying demons that swarm your face the second sweat touches your skin, and that's constantly. You can't swat fast enough. You can't escape. You can only outsmart them. And that's where the coal comes in. Thick, dark, oily, dragged beneath the eyes in sharp, bold lines, like war paint. You grind it from galena stone, a lead-based mineral, and mix it with oil or animal fat, because nothing in this world is sacred, not even your pores. You take your little stick, maybe bone or wood, and smear that black line across your eyelid like your life depends on it, because in a way, it does. Coal isn't for fashion. It's for protection, against flies, against infection, against blindness. See, the Nile is beautiful in paintings and poetry, but in real life, it's a biological nightmare. Stagnant water, rotting vegetation, swarms of insects that breed in numbers too high to count and don't care that you're trying to see. Every time you blink, something wants in. Every time you rub your eyes, you're risking irritation, swelling, pus, pain. But the coal helps. It forms a barrier, it repels, it shields. The dark pigment absorbs sunlight, reducing glare and the blinding desert brightness. Imagine walking around all day, sun bouncing off white stone and hot sand with no sunglasses, no shade, and not even a hat. Your only hope is a streak of black beneath your eyes to keep from going blind. It's like eyeliner meets survival gear. And guess what? It works. Even modern scientists have found antibacterial properties in the compounds used. Ancient Egypt, 1. Modern convenience, 0. Both men and women wear it. No gender norms here. Priests, farmers, children, royalty, everyone lines their eyes, not for seduction, but for sanitation. It's routine, ritual, practical magic smeared beneath your eyelids with the kind of urgency you'd reserve today for applying sunscreen in the middle of a wildfire. But that's not all. There's green pigment too, malachite, ground into a fine powder and pressed above the eyelid. It wasn't just for flair. It had antimicrobial properties. The gods knew what they were doing, or at least the herbalists did. Between the infections and the sun damage, it wasn't makeup, it was medicine. And if it also happened to make you look striking and otherworldly while you hauled bricks or scowled at your children, then hey, bonus. You didn't take it off at night. Why would you? Night brought its own threats, sandstorms, insects, gods you couldn't see. So the coal stayed on, caked, smudged, embedded in the creases of your skin like a permanent mask. You'd reapply in the morning with the same casual intensity someone today might apply deodorant. Not to feel pretty, to not die slowly. So the next time you see a statue of an Egyptian queen with that iconic cat-eye flick and think, wow, she really served, just know, she probably had conjunctivitis. She wasn't getting ready for a date. She was getting ready for war, with bacteria, with flies, with a world that didn't give her any mercy unless she smeared it on herself with a tiny stick and a prayer. In ancient Egypt, makeup wasn't vanity. It was strategy. And behind every beautiful gaze was someone desperately trying to not go blind. In ancient Egypt, jewelry wasn't just decoration. It was a declaration of power, of protection, and occasionally of your slow and glamorous descent into chronic poisoning. You see someone walk by, draped in amulets and beads, gold catching the sun like a divine spotlight, and you think, royalty, prestige, importance, and yes, you'd be right. The more you wore, the more you mattered. Jewelry was your business card, your ID badge, your spiritual insurance policy. It told the world who you were, who you worshipped, and how many people would show up crying at your funeral. But the reasons for wearing it ran deeper than status. This wasn't just fashion, this was protection. Life in Egypt was a full-contact sport. Hostile sun, hostile animals, hostile gods, and you needed all the help you could get. Enter the scarab amulet, beetle-shaped, worn to guard the heart and guide it safely through the underworld. There was the Eye of Horus for healing, the Ankh for life, the Djed pillar for stability. You didn't just wear these, you clung to them. You believed in them, because when medicine is half prayer and half guesswork, sometimes a little carved stone feels like your best shot at not dying from a snake bite or a ghost. Children wore jewelry, so did the dead. Infants had protective beads tied around their necks before they could crawl. Corpses were buried with necklaces, rings, and gold toe caps, because even death didn't stop the need for spiritual bling. It wasn't enough to look good in life. You had to look expensive for the gods, too. After all, Judgment Day was coming, and you didn't want to meet Osiris underdressed. And let's talk materials. Gold, obviously, was the crown jewel. Egypt had gold like modern people have plastic, everywhere, in everything, shining with divine energy. It didn't tarnish, which made it perfect for symbolizing eternity. But the average peasant, you weren't rocking gold. You had beads, maybe some bone or faience, glazed ceramic shaped into little blue deities or flowers. They looked nice enough, but they chipped. They cracked. They reminded you that even in death, you'd be buried in knockoffs. Now here's the kicker. Jewelry wasn't just a little dangerous because of jealous eyes or sticky fingers. It was chemically dangerous, toxic even. Some cosmetics used to decorate jewelry contained lead, and not the metaphorical kind, real lead, the heavy metal kind. The kind that whispers sweet nothings to your nervous system while slowly ruining your insides. Some pigments used in makeup and paint, especially the bright reds and blacks found in ornate inlays, were lead-based, and they flaked and got absorbed and found their way into your bloodstream one bead at a time. But no one knew. You just thought you were getting headaches because of the heat, or the bad fish, or the gods were mad again. The idea that your necklace was giving you brain fog, unthinkable. Jewelry was sacred, holy, a direct line to the divine. It couldn't possibly be the reason your stomach hurt or your memory was getting fuzzy. So you kept wearing it, the bracelets, the rings, the heavy gold collars that dug into your neck like status-shaped nooses. You wore them to funerals and festivals. You wore them to bed. You wore them to your deathbed. Because not wearing jewelry, that would be madness. That would be vulnerability. That would be facing the world, and the next one, completely naked. So no, ancient Egyptian jewelry wasn't just for show. It was a shield, a symbol, a silent scream of "I matter," even if it was slowly poisoning you to death. And if you had the choice, you'd wear it anyway. Because in a world this brutal, shining was better than surviving dull. In ancient Egypt, clothing wasn't fashion, it was armor. Not against swords or spears or jealous neighbors, but against the thing that never slept, never blinked, and never stopped trying to burn you alive, the sun. You wake up in a world where the heat doesn't rise, it erupts. There's no grace period, no soft golden hour. The moment that sun peeks over the dunes, it's war. Your linen tunic isn't an outfit. It's your only line of defense against a sky that wants to cook you like a goat carcass on a spit. And if you don't dress right, you die. Not immediately. The desert's more patient than that. It gives you hours to suffer first. Let's say your only tunic tore yesterday, snagged on a cartwheel or shredded by the wind. Maybe you're too poor to own a spare. Maybe you lent it to a cousin, and now it smells like fish guts and betrayal. So you go out shirtless, thinking, it's fine. I'll manage. You won't. By mid-morning, your shoulders are red. By noon, they're purple. By mid-afternoon, your skin starts to bubble, tiny, searing blisters that rise like the Nile at flood season. You can't touch them, you can't scratch. The pain is constant, like someone's pressing hot coals into your flesh and asking how long you can stay polite. Your head pounds, your eyes sting. The sweat that once cooled you evaporates too fast to help now. You stop sweating entirely, which is ancient Egypt's way of saying, congratulations, you've upgraded to dying. Because without proper clothing, your body goes into full rebellion. The sun scorches the back of your neck, the tops of your feet, your forearms, your scalp. If you shaved your head this week, too bad. You've got third-degree regrets. Even your eyelids burn. And don't think this only applies to laborers. Priests, scribes, even merchants, all of them knew that venturing outside without the proper layers was like asking the gods for a one-way ticket to the afterlife. Because in Egypt, exposure wasn't about cold. It was about raw, unfiltered incineration. Shade was rare, wind was hot, water was unreliable. But clothing, that was your salvation, or your sentence. And let's not pretend linen is some miracle fabric. It's thin, it breathes, sure, but it also disintegrates with time, tears easily, and clings to your body like wet parchment when soaked. Still, it's the only thing standing between you and sunstroke, dehydration, skin infections, and the 1,000 other tiny deaths that stalk you from sunrise to sunset. People got clever, head wraps, loose veils, scarves soaked in Nile water, wrung out just enough to last an hour before evaporating, not because they were trying to look elegant. Because if you didn't keep your head covered, the sun would burrow into your skull and boil your brain. Literally, ancient heat stroke didn't come with a warning label. It came with seizures, collapse, a face-down nap in the dirt you never woke up from. Children died this way, elders too. All it took was one gamble, one decision to walk to the fields without wrapping up, to run an errand without that threadbare cloth between your skin and the sky. You'd start out walking. By sunset, if you were lucky, someone would drag you home and cover your blistered body in wet rags and whispered prayers. And if you weren't lucky, they'd dig a shallow grave, pour a little beer, and talk about how you should have worn a shirt. So yes, in ancient Egypt, clothes mattered. They weren't accessories. They were survival gear. You didn't wear them to impress. You wore them to live. And if you got it wrong, you wouldn't make it past sunset. Let's talk about the one thing no one wants to talk about, but everyone has to do. Not war, not worship, not working in the fields until your spine folds in half. No, this is more primal, more personal. This is about going to the bathroom in ancient Egypt. And friend, it's not good. There are no toilets. There is no flush. There's no sweet moment of privacy where you lock a door and pretend you've briefly escaped the screaming chaos of daily life. In ancient Egypt, going to the bathroom isn't a break, it's a burden. You wake up with a cramp in your stomach. Bad fish? Maybe. Rotten grain beer? Definitely. But the moment hits you, that deep, uncomfortable oh no in your gut. And now, you're on a mission. Find a place to go before disaster strikes. If you're lucky, and that's doing a lot of heavy lifting here, you have access to a hole, not a toilet, not even a seat. Just a dugout pit behind your mud brick house, surrounded by half-hearted reeds and the faintest illusion of privacy. It smells, always. It's buzzing with flies, the kind that never leave, and they are deeply interested in your situation. If you live in the city, you might not even have a hole. You might have a bucket. Let that settle in. A bucket, maybe clay, maybe wood, maybe already a little too full. And if you're part of a big family, you better hope the last person emptied it. And by emptied it, I mean carried it sloshing and swaying down to the edge of the neighborhood, dumped it into the communal waste trench, then rinsed it with water that may or may not be more dangerous than the contents of the bucket itself. Most people, they don't bother. They take their chances in the open fields, or behind a wall, or near the riverbank when no one's looking. But there's no privacy, not really, no doors, no locks. Just the vague hope that nobody's watching while you squat and contemplate your choices. And here's the part that makes it all worse. Number toilet, paper. Not even a bad version, not a cloth rag, not a leaf, not a single mercy from the gods of hygiene. You've got sand, maybe straw. If you're feeling extra resourceful, maybe a smooth pottery shard, which sounds refined until you remember you're wiping yourself with something that used to be a bowl. Sand doesn't wipe, it scrapes. It doesn't clean, it exfoliates, aggressively. You finish the job not feeling fresh, but wounded, slightly raw, and deeply ashamed. You try to pretend this is normal, because for you, it is. If you're wealthier, you might have an actual latrine, a raised stone seat with a channel that drains into a pit. Fancy, almost regal, except it's still outside, still smelly, still used by everyone. And no, there's still no toilet paper. You just get to suffer with dignity. Congratulations. And don't even think about washing your hands. Soap? Never heard of it. Running water? Not unless you count the Nile, which is full of crocodiles, sewage, and divine wrath. So you wipe with sand, brush your hands off on your linen skirt, and carry on with your day, back to the fields, the temple, the kitchen, touching food, touching tools, touching each other. You carry the smell with you, the shame, the quiet knowledge that nobody's clean and nobody talks about it. It's the shared suffering of a civilization, unspoken, unavoidable, unrelenting. In ancient Egypt, the bathroom wasn't a room. It was a hole in the world where dignity went to die. And you just hope the wind's blowing the other way. You want to know what fear tastes like. Try brushing your teeth in ancient Egypt. There's no mint, no foam, no dentist-approved miracle paste in a neat little tube. What you've got is a powder, homemade, hand-ground, and horrifying. A dusty little blend of whatever abrasive substances happen to be lying around, mashed together with just enough desperation to pass as toothpaste. Let's start with the ingredients. Crushed eggshells, burnt ox hooves, powdered pumice stone, charred animal bones, ashes. Yes, ashes. From fire pits, from old meals, from who knows what. Because in ancient Egypt, cleanliness wasn't about comfort, it was about survival. And sometimes, that meant scraping your teeth with the remains of something that used to moo. You'd wake up with your mouth tasting like dried beer and regret, your gums swollen, your breath foul. Because remember, you've been chewing on sand-filled bread and half-rotten fish for weeks. The bacteria aren't just visiting, they've moved in, set up shop, and started charging rent. And if you don't fight back, they'll rot your teeth straight out of your skull. So what do? You reach for your toothbrush. Except it's not a brush. Not really. It's a chew stick, a frayed twig, split at the end, used to scrub and jab at your teeth like you're trying to exorcise demons from your mouth. And you dip it into your homemade death dust, then start scrubbing. Immediately, your gums start to bleed. That's just part of the experience. The eggshells and bones grind against the enamel like someone's using sandpaper on your soul. It hurts. It always hurts. You try not to wince. You try to pretend you're being cleansed. But deep down, you know, this isn't hygiene. This is punishment. And the worst part? It actually worked. Sort of. See, the abrasives did remove plaque and bits of food, along with a healthy chunk of your enamel. You might have cleaner teeth, but they're also weaker, more brittle. You're trading long-term health for short-term relief. And you'll pay for it later, in pain, in abscesses, in teeth so decayed they rattle loose when you chew. There's no dentist to call, no appointment, no laughing gas. You get a toothache in ancient Egypt, and your options are: live with it until it falls out on its own. Have someone yank it with a piece of twine and a prayer. Die of infection. Those are your choices. That's dental care. So you brush, because doing something is better than doing nothing. Even if that something involves ashes from the fireplace and the bones of last week's dinner ground up into a powder that tastes like regret and feels like gravel. The rich had slightly better options. More refined powders, fancier sticks, maybe a servant to do the scrubbing for them. But even pharaohs had dental problems. Archaeologists have found royal mummies with abscesses, broken teeth, and signs of chronic infection. Turns out, no amount of gold can protect your mouth from sandbread and prehistoric dentistry. So you finish your morning scrub with blood on your lips, dust in your throat, and the faint satisfaction of knowing you tried. You rinse your mouth with water that might give you dysentery. You spit into the dirt and look up at the sky, wondering how something so basic, brushing your teeth, can feel like a war. And then, you go eat more sand-filled bread, because that's the cycle. Pain, clean, eat. Pain, clean, eat. Until the teeth give out or you do. In ancient Egypt, a clean mouth wasn't a luxury. It was a battlefield. And your toothpaste was literally bones, ashes, and grit, just like everything else. They're in your hair. They're in your gut. They're between your toes, under your nails, and wriggling somewhere far too personal for polite conversation. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where parasites weren't an occasional problem. They were a lifestyle. You don't just live with parasites. You host them. You carry them like an extra layer of clothing, or like shame. Everyone's got them. Everyone knows they've got them. And no one talks about it, because what would be the point? You go to sleep scratching. You wake up scratching. Somewhere beneath your tunic, there's always something biting, burrowing, feasting. Lice in your scalp, fleas in your straw mat, worms in your belly. The itching never stops. And when it does, it just means the infection's gone deep enough that your nerves have given up. Comfort is not a goal. Comfort is a myth you tell children before they find their first tapeworm. Let's talk about your intestines, that bubbling, churning mess inside you. Not hunger, not a bad fig. That's your personal pet Ascaris lumbricoides, roundworms, thriving off whatever scraps you manage to digest. You don't need to imagine them. You feel them. Every twist, every wriggle, every sharp pain that punches you from the inside like someone lit a fire in your stomach and forgot to put it out. Diarrhea isn't a symptom, it's your morning routine. Your body purges because it's tired of negotiating with a colony of freeloading gut invaders who multiply faster than you can eat. You lose weight. Your skin goes gray. Your breath starts to smell like something crawled up your throat and decided to stay. And guess what? You still have to go to work. Still have to haul bricks or grind grain or wade into the Nile, knowing full well the water will give you more guests. Because the Nile? Oh, it's beautiful, sacred, life-giving, and crawling with parasitic horrors. Schistosomiasis, caused by worms that swim into your body through your skin while you bathe or collect water. They don't knock, they don't ask, they just enter. You feel a tingle in your feet, and by the time you dry off, they're already multiplying inside your bloodstream. You cough blood, You pee blood. You get tired for no reason, then dizzy, then dead. But slowly, casually. Like the parasite doesn't want you gone, just weakened. And you try to fight back. You do. You boil water when you can spare the wood. You drink beer instead of raw Nile water because at least the alcohol might kill something. You shave your head to avoid lice, smear your body with oils to keep bugs from landing. You hang charms, pray, burn herbs. You rub garlic on your feet. You eat clay. You try, but it doesn't work. The lice always come back. The worms never leave. The fleas are just part of your family now. They've got names, personalities. They're better fed than you are. And the healers? They mean well. They offer spells, talismans, foul-tasting teas. They chant. They wave incense. They tell you your belly aches because your soul is unbalanced. Number. It aches because something the length of a garden snake is living in your colon. So you keep scratching, keep limping, keep pretending this is fine. Because it has to be. Because in ancient Egypt, parasites weren't a crisis. They were a constant. They lived in your home, in your water, in your body. They shared your food, your bed, your life. And they never paid rent. You didn't defeat them. You just lasted longer than some of them. And in this land of gods and sand and suffering, that was the closest you'd ever get to a victory. You don't win. That's the first thing you need to understand. In ancient Egypt, when it comes to bugs, worms, lice, and everything else that crawls, slithers, and breeds in the damp corners of your life, you do not win. You adapt. You adjust. You compromise your dignity, your skin, and your sanity. Or you die. That's the deal. You wake up scratching, before your eyes open, before your mind even remembers who you are. You're already clawing at your scalp, your ribs, behind your knees. Fleas? Lice? Maybe just your imagination? Doesn't matter. The itch is real. The bugs are real. And pretending otherwise is how you end up being carried out feet first to the communal grave behind the granary. Lice are just part of life. You can't get rid of them. You can't outrun them. So you shave. Everyone shaves. Head, body, arms, everything. Smooth as a polished statue, because the less hair you have, the fewer places lice can hide. Bald isn't a style choice, it's pest control. You see a clean scalp in ancient Egypt? That's not fashion. That's survival. Worms. Oh, you've got worms. Of course you do. So does your neighbor. So does your neighbor's goat. So does the fish you ate last night that was more bones than meat and still somehow managed to make your stomach churn like the Nile during flood season. They live inside you, those worms. Nestled deep in your intestines like tenants who refuse to leave. Every so often, you feel them move. You try not to scream. You try not to look when you go to the bathroom. And yet, somehow, you still have to go to work. Still have to lift, dig, sweat, march, and pretend you're not a bag of infected meat being slowly hollowed out from the inside. Because if you collapse, you're a burden. A liability. Someone to step over. You get sick enough to stop working, and you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. So you learn to live with it. You stop flinching when something bites you. You stop complaining when your stomach cramps. You eat, knowing you'll probably throw it up. You drink, knowing it might contain larvae. You sleep, knowing things will crawl on you, in you. Because what else are you going to do? There's no medicine. Not really. There's prayer. There's garlic. There's a healer with a collection of dried herbs, half of which make you vomit and the other half do absolutely nothing. There's burning incense to drive away evil spirits while worms continue to breed in your liver. There's no miracle cure, no savior in the wings, just you, a cloud of flies, and the daily decision. Do I fight this, or do I just live with it? Fighting is noble, romantic, stupid. You wash your clothes in Nile water, the bugs come back. You rub your body with oils, now you're just a tastier snack. You cover your bed in ashen herbs and hope that tonight, maybe, just maybe, the fleas will go bother someone else. They won't, they never do. But pretending helps. You don't get better. You get used to it. You stop hoping for clean skin. You stop dreaming of relief. You measure your success in smaller units. Fewer rashes this week. One less worm in your stool. Only 30 bites instead of 50. Victories you don't celebrate because you're too tired, too itchy, too alive to care. That's the real cost of life in ancient Egypt. Not war, not famine. Infestation. The stakes, they're simple. You either live with the bugs, or you die trying to get clean. And no one in this world gets to do both. You live surrounded by gods. Gods of the sun, gods of death, gods of floods and rebirth and stars that never blink. But you also live surrounded by monsters. And these ones don't wear crowns or carry staffs. They have fangs, claws, venom, and zero interest in your prayers. Let's start with the Nile. It looks peaceful, doesn't it? Wide, calm, a ribbon of blue cutting through the endless tan of the desert. Life giver, field flutter, sacred artery of Egypt. And it is. But it's also home to a prehistoric murder log with teeth, the crocodile. You can't see them at first. That's how they like it. They float, silent, still, eyes just above the water, watching, judging, waiting. You step in to fill a water jar or bathe or wash yesterday's blood and grime from your skin, and suddenly the water explodes. There's no warning, no music swell. Just teeth and terror, and the awful moment where you realize you are not the apex predator here. If you're lucky, you only lose the bucket. If you're unlucky, you become the bucket. And the crocodile? It rolls, it tears, it disappears. And everyone just stares at the ripples and mutters, well, he knew the risk. So maybe you stay out of the water, smart, sensible. But the danger doesn't stop at the shoreline. You wake up, stretch, slide your foot into your sandal, and sting. Pain lights up your leg like a lightning bolt wrapped in fire. You kick off the shoe. A scorpion skitters out, tail high, twitching, proud. It's not big. It doesn't have to be. Its venom is small, but your body is smaller. And now your legs numb, your lips tingle, your vision pulses. You sit in the dirt and wait. For the burning to pass, or for the burning to win. People tell you to check your shoes. Always check your shoes, but you forget, or you're tired. Or the sun's already up and you're late for hauling stones or digging canals or doing whatever task the gods, or your overseer, assigned to crush you today. And when you finally drag yourself home, body broken and soul soggy, you throw yourself onto your mat, ready for the sweet nothing of sleep. But the mat is warm, moving. You lift the corner and find a snake, coiled, hissing, beautiful in the way only something designed to kill you can be. It doesn't strike yet. It's waiting, just like the crocodile, just like the scorpion. Because in ancient Egypt, everything waits to kill you. And don't count on antidotes. The village healer has a handful of herbs, a few prayers, and a stick with a carved cat head on it. That's it. If you get bitten or stung or dragged into the Nile, your chances depend on luck, stamina, and how close you are to the one guy in the village who claims his grandmother taught him to suck poison from wounds. But mostly, you just hope it's not your turn. Because everywhere you go, Something is watching, crawling, creeping, nesting in your sandals, your food storage, your blankets, your body. There are beetles that burrow, frogs that squirt toxins, spiders that nest above your door and drop like tiny assassins onto your face at 2 a.m. You learn to live with it. You tap your shoes before you wear them, shake your bedding before you lie down. You peer into pots before reaching inside. You become paranoid, careful, survivable. Because in ancient Egypt, the animals aren't out there in the wild. They're inside your life, and they don't care if you're tired. They just care if you stop moving. And if you do, well, your dinner. Here's the thing about ancient Egypt. It's not just the sun that wants you dead. It's the animals, all of them. Big ones, small ones, crawling ones, slithering ones, buzzing, biting, stinging, gnawing, hiding under your bed until it's too late ones. And none of them care about your job, your prayers, or your very reasonable desire not to die today. Let's start with the crocodile, because if you live near the Nile, you've probably met one, or at least heard the story of someone who did and didn't finish the story because they got eaten halfway through. Crocodiles are not slow. Crocodiles are not lazy. Crocodiles are weaponized anxiety in scaly form, and they are always closer than you think. You go to the river to fill a jar. You lean down. You feel a breeze, except there's no wind. It's teeth. Suddenly you're in the water, disoriented, screaming, and no one can help you because the Nile is sacred and terrifying, and no one's stupid enough to follow you in. Survival tip: don't go near the water. Alternative tip: never go near the water alone. But let's be honest, you'll go. You need water, and it needs lunch. Guess who wins? Then there are scorpions. They don't kill you quickly. They ruin you slowly. They hide in shoes, in baskets, in the cool shadows beneath the bed where your fingers go before your brain does. One sting, and your whole arm lights up like a funeral pyre. It swells, it throbs. It feels like something is trying to leave your body the long, painful way. You think you'll be fine, until you're not. Your tongue goes numb. Your breathing turns ragged. You fall over in front of your neighbor, and they're like, "Should have checked your sandals." Survival tip: shake everything, even if you shook it yesterday, even if you already wore it once today. Scorpions don't care. They relocate. Next, snakes. Egyptian cobras, sand vipers, sneaky death noodles with a passion for bedrolls and dark corners. You won't see them, you'll feel them. Fangs in your calf, or your hand, or your face, if you were dumb enough to nap with your mouth open. And if that happens, run, not to safety. Run to someone with a knife, because the only known cure is cutting, burning, bleeding, or praying real hard while someone rubs an onion on the bite and tells you to relax. Spoiler: you won't. Let's not forget the flies. Oh, flies, you say. How bad could they be? Bad. Swarming clouds of them. Up your nose, in your ears, drinking the sweat off your face while you're trying to blink. They carry disease. They lay eggs in your food. They land on open wounds. Survival tip: smear yourself in oil and pretend you're a candle. They hate the slick. You'll smell awful, but you already do, so it's fine. And just when you think you've memorized all the danger, surprise. Hyenas. Yes, desert hyenas. They're not always around, just often enough that you remember how fragile your limbs are. They'll circle you at night. You'll hear the laughter first, the creepy, echoing kind that makes your spine think about exiting your body. Survival tip: fire, loud noises, a group. But if you're alone, well, maybe you shouldn't have left your hut at midnight just to pee. So here's the real truth. The animals are always out there. They're faster than you, hungrier than you, less emotionally attached to your continued existence. And you can memorize all the survival tips you want. You can shake your sandals, smear your oils, avoid the riverbanks. But in ancient Egypt, some days you're the survivor. Other days, you're the cautionary tale. Let's get one thing straight. In ancient Egypt, cats were not pets. They were not just animals. They were not companions or playthings or adorable little murderers with toe beans. Number. Cats were divine. They were sacred, untouchable, worshipped. And if you dared to cross one, you weren't just risking a scratch. You were risking cosmic retribution. This is the only creature in all of ancient Egypt that was feared and respected in equal measure. People bowed to pharaohs, sacrificed to gods, trembled at crocodiles. But the cat? The cat ruled quietly, without effort, without asking. It walked into your house like it owned the place, because it did. It blinked at your offerings, knocked over your bowls, slept in your bed, and there wasn't a thing you could do about it. Because you knew this creature was blessed. Cats were seen as the living embodiment of the goddess Bastet, protector of the home, goddess of fertility, joy, and war. Yes, war. You think that's a contradiction? Then you've never tried to stop a cat from doing something it really wanted to do. Bastet wasn't soft. She was beautiful, yes, gentle, motherly, comforting, but also fierce, vengeful, protective with the kind of ferocity that said, "I will absolutely burn your village down if you touch my kittens." And that energy? That was every cat in Egypt. They were protectors, literal defenders of the home, not just spiritually but physically. They kept grain stores safe from rats, drove snakes out of homes, killed pests before they could spread disease. They earned their keep, and then some. You didn't thank them. You didn't reward them. You honored them. With gold, with statues, with prayers. Killing a cat? Unthinkable, illegal. People wept when cats died. Some families shaved their eyebrows in mourning. They buried them in tombs, wrapped in linen, surrounded by incense, amulets, and sometimes whole mummified mice, so the cat could snack in the afterlife. You got a shallow grave and a few half-hearted words. The cat? Full-blown funeral procession. And don't even think about hurting one. There are records, actual historical records, of people being executed for accidentally killing a cat. Accidentally. One Roman diplomat visiting Egypt supposedly killed a cat, and the mob beat him to death in the street, despite pleas from the Pharaoh himself. Let that sink in. A man, protected by politics and power, lost his life to cat-based justice. Because in Egypt, cats weren't below you. They were above you. Spiritually, socially, probably even economically. They came and went as they pleased. Slept where they wanted, ate what they wanted. They weren't trained, they trained you. If a cat settled on your lap, you did not move. If it stared at you for too long, you apologized. If it knocked over a jar of sacred oil, you cleaned it up and assumed it was a divine message. And deep down, you believed it was. Because cats knew things. You could see it in their eyes. They watched you like they'd seen your dreams, your sins, the day of your death. And still, they sat beside you, purring, regal, dangerous. So you loved them. You feared them. And above all, you respected them. In a world of hunger, pain, and chaos, cats didn't beg. They didn't suffer. They thrived. They demanded altars while you dug ditches. They were adored while you were ignored. And honestly, they deserved it. Because in ancient Egypt, cats weren't just sacred. They were royalty with claws. And the only god who might let you live if you gave it tuna. In ancient Egypt, nature doesn't give warnings. It doesn't send polite reminders or offer second chances. It just waits, patient, silent, watching. And the moment you slip, the moment your foot lands too close, your hand reaches too far, your eyes close for a second too long, it ends you. One mistake. That's all it takes. Not a series of errors. Not a tragic misstep after months of foolish behavior. Just one. A single moment of weakness. A lapse in judgment. And now your name gets whispered in past tense. You forget to check your shoes one morning. A scorpion turns your ankle into a searing lump of venom. The pain spreads like fire, slow and cruel, and you think you'll be fine, until your vision swims and your breath shortens. You collapse before lunch. You won't be getting up again. You wade into the Nile to fill a water jar. A crocodile was already there, blending in, part of the river until suddenly it's not. There's no splash, no warning, just jaws, pressure, bones snapping like dry reeds. You scream, but it's muffled under the water that's now your tomb. You're harvesting reeds. You reach in too fast, too confident. Snake, coiled, waiting. Fangs flash, and then you're racing time itself, rushing to the village healer who has a prayer, a poultice, and not much else. And while he mutters over your shaking body, you realize this is it. This is how you leave, sweating, swollen, forgotten. The wildlife in ancient Egypt doesn't bluff. It doesn't wound. It finishes. It kills with elegance, with precision, with the kind of clinical efficiency that reminds you, you are not top of the food chain. You are barely a footnote. And it's not just the big beasts that get you. It's the swarm of flies that lays eggs in your open wound. It's the lice that crawl into your ears and leave infections that melt your hearing. It's the rat that nibbles on your foot while you sleep, because the line between sleeping man and leftover meat is thinner than you'd like to think. Even the cats, revered and holy, could turn on you in a flash if disrespected. Scratch the wrong one, hurt its kitten, and suddenly you're on the village's list of people the gods might smite next. And what can you do? You can't outfight a crocodile. You can't outrun a viper. You can't even find all the parasites living in your gut, let alone evict them. So you get careful, hyper-aware. You tap your shoes out before wearing them. You poke every bush before stepping through. You walk wide around puddles and never, never go to the riverbank alone at dusk. Because you've seen it. You've seen what happens to the reckless, to the overconfident, to the poor fool who thought, it won't happen to me. Their screams echo. Their names fade. Their bodies, if recovered, are reminders that in this place, survival isn't about strength. It's about fear, respect, routine paranoia. And if you ever forget that, nature reminds you, swiftly, with teeth, with venom, with silence. So no, this isn't just wilderness. This isn't some scenic backdrop to your farming montage. This is Egypt, and everything here is alive, ancient, and hungry. So you stay alert, you stay quiet, and above all, you never, ever make a mistake. Because the moment you do, you're not just dead, you're eaten, you're sick, again. Maybe it's a stomach pain, maybe it's a splitting headache, maybe it's that weird rash on your leg that's definitely growing teeth. Whatever it is, you need help. And in ancient Egypt, that means you're going to the doctor, if you're lucky. If you're really lucky, the doctor's sober, not cursed, and in the mood to pretend he knows what he's doing. Because make no mistake, this man is not a modern doctor. He doesn't have a stethoscope, or a diagnosis, or a basic understanding of germs. What he does have is a toolkit full of crushed herbs, sharp sticks, crocodile dung, and about 1,000 years of superstition. He greets you by sniffing loudly and frowning at your aura. Yes, your aura. Because in ancient Egypt, sickness isn't just physical. It's spiritual. It's emotional. It's punishment. Maybe you offended a god. Maybe your neighbor cursed you. Maybe your soul is leaking through your stomach. All viable medical opinions. He examines you by poking, prodding, and sometimes just listening to what your body sounds like when he puts his ear to your chest and closes his eyes dramatically. Does your abdomen growl? Do your eyelids flutter? Does your sweat smell like demons? These are the diagnostic tools of the trade. Then comes the treatment. And this, dear friend, is where things get creative. He might prescribe honey, which sounds nice, until you realize it's being slathered on an open wound that's already hosting a dozen flies and maybe a scorpion or two. He might mix up a drink of beer, garlic, and moldy bread, which is either the world's worst smoothie or the accidental birth of penicillin. He might smear your rash with cow dung, wrap your limbs in linen soaked in crocodile fat, and chant over your body while waving a carved ankh and whispering to a god who hasn't answered anyone in centuries. And when he's done, he looks you in the eye and says with full confidence, "You will be well, or you will die. Either way, my work here is complete." You're not sure if you've just been healed or hexed, but you leave with a prescription scrawled on a scrap of papyrus that reads something like, "Boil 3 dates, 1 beetle, and the toe of a dead man. Drink while facing the moon." You nod. You thank him. Because what else are you supposed to do? Sometimes it does work. Sometimes the fever breaks. Sometimes the wound scabs over. Sometimes your stomach stops trying to eject itself through your mouth. And on those days, the doctor is hailed as a genius, a miracle worker, a man who touched the gods and came back with secrets. But more often, he was just guessing which herb won't kill you, guessing which spirit is mad at you, guessing whether your blood should be inside or outside your body. Because ancient medicine isn't science. It's hope wrapped in ritual. A little bit of bark, a little bit of belief, a few words whispered in the right direction. And yet, they tried. They kept records, wrote down symptoms, compared outcomes. Somehow, they kept people alive long enough to make more people who would eventually invent better medicine. Real tools, real cures, real understanding. But in your time, the best you can hope for is that your doctor's hunch lines up with your luck. Because in ancient Egypt, a doctor isn't just someone who heals. He's someone who spins the wheel of fate and hopes it lands on not dead. And if it doesn't, well, there's always the embalmers. You're sick, you're in pain, you're desperate. And in ancient Egypt, that's when the real horror begins. Because you're not about to be healed. You're about to be treated. And treatments, here, they don't soothe, they don't comfort. They test your will to live. Let's say you've got a wound, a nasty one, split open by a falling stone or a careless tool or some beast that mistook your ankle for an appetizer. It's red, swollen. Pus is leaking out like your skin's trying to evacuate the scene. So you go to the healer. And what does he do? He nods thoughtfully. Maybe says something about evil spirits trapped in the blood. Then he reaches into a jar and pulls out moldy bread. You flinch. He doesn't. because this is actually one of the least terrifying things he's about to do. He presses the soggy, half-rotted crust right into your wound, packs it in like mortar, and wraps it with linen. You want to scream, but you're also weirdly hopeful, because weirdly, it sometimes worked. The mold had antibacterial properties. A happy accident. But no one knew that. They thought the bread just had good vibes. So you sit there with someone's half-eaten lunch on your infected leg, praying it doesn't kill you faster. Then comes the ointment. Ah, he says, you need a poultice. You think, herbs, maybe clay, something mild? Nope. Animal dung. That's right. He mixes up a thick paste of crocodile droppings, goose fat, and possibly some honey, because why not sweeten the suffering, and smears it across your skin like he's icing the world's most cursed cake. The smell? Unholy. The logic? Supposedly, the dung draws out the bad energy. The actual effect? It invites every insect in a 5-mile radius to come nibble your healing flesh like it's an open buffet. And if infection sets in, well, now you need another treatment. Lucky you. But the grand finale? Oh, that's bloodletting. Because when in doubt, remove the blood. It's always the blood's fault. Too much, too hot, too angry. That's why you're sick. That's why your bones ache. That's why your eyes are turning yellow and your belly's swollen like an overcooked goat bladder. So they cut you. Small incisions, forearm, ankle, maybe the neck if they're feeling bold, and let it drip. Sometimes they use leeches, sometimes just a sharpened reed. No anesthesia, no antiseptic. You clench your jaw, you tremble. You watch your life leak out while the healer murmurs about balancing the humors and appeasing Sekhmet. You faint. You wake up cold, lightheaded, and slightly more dead than before. But hey, at least your blood's balanced now, right? And if all that fails, there's still exorcism. Because clearly, if herbs and dung and scalpels don't work, it must be a demon. You're laid on a mat, a priest circles you chanting, someone throws incense into a flame, and they demand the sickness to leave your body like it's a guest overstaying its welcome. Spoiler, it doesn't. So you go home, covered in mold, smelling like goose excrement, bleeding into your linen wrappings, and praying that you either heal miraculously or die quickly. Because in ancient Egypt, treatment wasn't about feeling better. It was about doing something, anything. Even if that something was absolutely terrifying. And you endured it, because the only thing worse than being sick was being left alone with it. If you walked out of an ancient Egyptian doctor's hut alive, conscious, and still possessing most of your original organs, congratulations. You didn't just recover. You performed a miracle. Because in ancient Egypt, surviving a doctor wasn't expected. It wasn't normal. It wasn't even likely. It was a statistical anomaly. You see, medicine back then wasn't medicine the way we know it. It was a murky soup of half-truths, holy texts, and pure, beautiful guesswork. Your doctor was part healer, part priest, part hopeful lunatic with a toolkit full of goat fat and crushed limestone. He was doing his best. His best might still kill you. And not gently. Let's say you've got a fever, you're shaking, your skin's burning, you can't stand without seeing stars. In your mind, this means you need a bed, some cold water, maybe a few days of rest. To your doctor, this means one thing: your blood is angry. And the cure? Let it out. So they cut you. They bleed you. From the arm, the leg, maybe even the forehead if they're feeling ambitious. And they don't stop until you're pale as linen and questioning your will to live. If you survive the blood loss and don't pass out face first into the Nile, miracle number 1. Then there's the ointment, or more accurately, the biological nightmare stew they smear into your wounds like they're frosting a diseased cake. What's in it? Let's see. Moldy bread, sure. Animal fat, always. Ground beetles, powdered bone, a dash of honey to keep it sticky, and just a touch of excrement, human or animal. No one's asking. No one wants to know. You survive the infection that almost certainly comes from that delightful brew. Miracle number 2. Still breathing? Great. Let's up the stakes. Now it's time for the oral medicine. A drink, a tonic, a potion if you're feeling dramatic, which you are, because you've been sweating through your one linen tunic for 4 days. The ingredients? Boiled herbs, some bark, maybe crushed locust wings, definitely at least one thing from a dead animal, and probably a pebble or two someone swore helps bind the stomach. It smells like despair. It tastes like punishment. You drink it anyway, because you're desperate. And if you don't throw it back up within the hour or hallucinate the gods floating above your bed, miracle number 3. And yet, through all this, your doctor remains calm, focused, maybe even pleased. Because from his perspective, this is textbook. He's read the scrolls, memorized the spells, listened to the stars, and studied the intestines of sacrificial birds. He's given you every chance. And if you die, it wasn't him. It was the gods. It was your soul. It was your destiny. And maybe that's the most terrifying part of all. Your survival isn't his responsibility. It's yours. And the fact that you pulled through, battered and barely functional, just means you were lucky enough to dodge bad guesses, infected poultices, and venom-based eye drops long enough to heal on your own. So yes, surviving an Egyptian doctor was a miracle. Not because they were evil, not because they didn't care, but because they were working with tools carved from ignorance and faith, and you were the testing ground. You didn't recover because the treatment worked. You recovered despite it. And when that happened, people didn't say, "Wow, great doctor." They said, "The gods must really like you." And honestly, that was the best case scenario. You're exhausted, not tired, wrecked. Your back feels like it was stepped on by an ox. Your hands are blistered. Your skin burns from sun and salt and shame. You've spent the whole day hauling, digging, bleeding into the earth for someone else's tomb. You deserve rest. You need rest. And what do you get? A reed mat. Not a bed, not a mattress, not even a soft patch of dirt you can call your own. A mat woven from dried, brittle plants that poke through the cloth like tiny knives. The reeds crunch when you lie down, creak when you shift, and snap off in shards that jab you in places you didn't even know had nerve endings. Comfort? Not here. Not ever. The mat lies on the floor of your mud brick hut, which never quite stops being damp. The heat during the day bakes it like clay, but at night it sweats, slow, musty moisture that soaks into the mat from below and your body from above. You're not sleeping on it so much as being absorbed into it. And then, the bugs. Always the bugs. Tiny invaders that emerge the moment the sun disappears. Fleas, lice, beetles, ants, mosquitoes the size of fingernails and twice as angry. You feel them crawling across your skin, one after another, each one whispering, "You're not alone." You scratch until your skin opens, then scratch again, because your body no longer knows the difference between pain and relief. Sometimes you'll wake up mid-bite, a rat gnawing at your toe, a centipede weaving across your ribs. You flail, slap, scream, and no one helps, because they're all fighting their own six-legged battles on their own creaking reed mats. You tried tricks once, burned incense to ward them off, laid down herbs, rubbed oil on your legs until you looked like a sacrificial offering. Didn't work. Nothing works. They are many. You are one. The insects win. You shift onto your side, trying to find the 1 square inch of mat that hasn't been molded into a weapon. You curl up, knees to chest, arms wrapped tight, not for warmth, but to protect the soft parts. You pull a tattered cloth over your head. Not a blanket. There are no blankets. Just a veil, a gesture, a prayer that tonight the biting is manageable. Sleep doesn't come easy. It never does. Your mind races through the day, the sunburn that cracked your shoulder open, the overseer's voice still echoing in your skull, the bread you couldn't finish because it crunched like gravel, the child next door coughing again, louder this time. You close your eyes. The buzzing in your ear says you made a mistake. You open them. Still dark, still hot, still buzzing. There's no breeze, no cool air. The night doesn't bring relief, just a new flavor of discomfort, heat trapped in your body, radiating into the mat, radiating back. You shift again. The mat shifts back. Outside, the jackals scream. Inside, your stomach growls. And above it all, a single thought repeats like a lullaby made of sandpaper. This is normal. This is every night. This is your life. You don't fall asleep. You pass out. Eventually, your body gives up. It shuts down, not out of peace, but necessity. It slumps into unconsciousness like a slave collapsing in the field. No dreams, no rest, just pause. Until morning rips you back awake with another round of heat, hunger, and something crawling on your neck. So yeah, sleep? Good luck. You'll need it. Because in ancient Egypt, even rest feels like punishment. The sun is gone. The sky turns black. The wind finally stops baking your skin and starts to whisper. You'd think that would be a relief. No more searing heat. No more burning light. No more sweat in your eyes as you haul rocks for a pharaoh you'll never meet. But nighttime in ancient Egypt? That's when the real danger wakes up. You lie on your reed mat, aching, half-conscious, hoping for sleep that never truly comes. Outside, the darkness breathes, it stirs, and you know, this isn't rest. This is just the second shift of terror. Because the insects, they didn't go to bed. They waited for this. The mosquitoes emerge first, high-pitched demons with wings like razors. You hear them before you feel them, whining around your ears, your neck, your ankles, feeding freely while you slap at empty air. They're joined by beetles that crunch when you roll over them, fleas that leap from your mat to your skin and back again, and spiders that dangle from the ceiling like tiny curses in waiting. You shift, you scratch, you whisper a curse into the dark. It doesn't help, because every hour after sunset belongs to them. And if you thought they were bold during the day, at night, they own you. But it's not just bugs. It's snakes. Real, living nightmares with scales and fangs and no warning. You don't hear them slither. You don't see them coming. All it takes is one loose stone near the wall, one crack in the floor, one breath too deep, and suddenly you're eye to eye with a sand viper that didn't come to cuddle. You freeze. It doesn't. It coils, silent, judgmental, waiting for a reason. Sometimes you wake up to the bite. No sound, no scream. Just the white-hot sting in your leg and the knowledge that the clock has started ticking. The venom spreads fast. And unless someone nearby has a knife, a fire, or a miracle, you don't see sunrise. So you pray the snakes stay outside. You pray the walls hold. But mud brick isn't steel. And snakes don't need permission. And then there are the jackals. You hear them before anything else. long, hollow cries echoing across the flat, empty land. It starts as one voice, then two, then many. You lie there, staring into the black, and count the seconds between each howl. They're closer now. They always are. You don't know how many. You don't want to know how many. They roam the outskirts of villages, lean and starving, eyes glowing with a hunger that doesn't care about human rules. They tear into garbage piles, claw at weak doors, snap at anything that moves. Sometimes they come alone, sometimes in packs. Sometimes they take something. A chicken, a goat, a child. And you stay quiet. You don't move. You don't cough. Because sound travels. And the only thing thinner than your walls is the line between predator and prey. Your neighbors have stories. Everyone does. Of claw marks on doors. Of bones found outside. Of someone who didn't lock their animals up tight enough. Of someone who didn't come back. You don't need more stories. You need sunrise. So you wait. Eyes open, body tense, breath shallow. Because in ancient Egypt, night isn't sleep. It's survival. You've made it through the sun's wrath. Now you have to outlast the shadows. And if you hear something move outside your hut, you don't check. You don't call out. You don't investigate. You stay still. And you pray that whatever's out there stays out. You've survived the sun. You've dodged the snakes, outlasted the jackals, slapped away enough mosquitoes to be declared a minor deity. And now you're lying still in the pitch-black silence of your mud brick hut, praying for sleep. But it doesn't come, because you're not just fighting heat and hunger anymore. You're fighting the unseen. Welcome to the spiritual minefield that is nighttime in ancient Egypt, the hour of ghosts, the domain of demons, the time when the veil between this world and the next wore thinner than the linen cloth barely covering your body. You don't sleep easy. No one does, because everyone, from the humblest farmer to the most perfumed noble, knows what the night brings. It's not just dark. It's haunted. You hear a whisper. Was it wind? A creak. Was it the door? A low groan in the wall. Was it settling clay or something ancient waking up for another round of torment? You don't ask. You don't want to know. Because if you hear something strange in the night, it's not your imagination. It's something else. Something old. Something angry. The Egyptians believed the dead weren't just gone. They were around, lingering, watching, sometimes helpful, but usually not. Because death didn't make people nicer, it just made them frustrated. Frustrated that they were stuck, forgotten, improperly buried. Frustrated that you were alive and still had a pulse and maybe a working liver. They came back to rattle your doors, to sit on your chest while you slept, to whisper things in your ear that made you wake up sweating with your heart thundering like a runaway chariot. Nightmares weren't dreams. They were visitations. You wake up gasping, paralyzed, unable to move, unable to scream. That's not sleep paralysis. That's a demon, a real one. A spirit that climbed through your window, slid beneath your mat, and decided to press down on your lungs just to remind you who's in charge. You call it a bad night. The priests call it Amut or Sabau or one of the 100 other names the Egyptians gave to the invisible things that made their lives miserable after sunset. And if you're sick, cursed, unlucky, that's not fate. That's not coincidence. That's possession. Demons were blamed for everything. Coughing blood, demon. Fever, demon. Terrible harvest, demon in the soil. Stubbed your toe, demon in your sandal. Literally everything bad had a spirit behind it, and they were busy. The only defense? Magic, amulets, incantations whispered 3 times while facing north and balancing on 1 foot. You wear the Eye of Horus. You hang protective charms above your door. You place little clay gods at the corners of your bed like spiritual nightlights. You burn incense. You mutter spells under your breath every time the wind shifts the wrong way. And still you're never safe. Because these things, they don't knock. They don't ask. They enter. And the worst part? If you scream at night, no one comes running. Because they're scared too. They're lying in their own huts, holding their breath, eyes wide open, pretending they didn't hear you. Because if they acknowledge it, it might notice them next. So you lie there, paralyzed by superstition, sweat, and a creeping chill that doesn't make any sense in the desert. And you hope. You hope the spirit moves on. You hope the demon gets bored. You hope you're not next on the list of things that should have been buried properly. Because in ancient Egypt, the night wasn't just dark. It was haunted. And the dead? They were never far. You want to know what counts as success in ancient Egypt? It's not building a pyramid. It's not surviving a crocodile attack. It's not making it through another 14-hour workday without collapsing into the nearest irrigation ditch. No, real success is sleeping through the night without bolting upright, soaked in sweat, clutching your chest like the gods just tried to rip out your soul. Because in this world, rest isn't a right. It's not even a reward. It's a gamble. A nightly negotiation with insects, spirits, heat, rats, hunger, and your own haunted imagination. So when you lay down on your brittle reed mat, which feels like a punishment wrapped in straw, and you pull your scratchy linen over your legs, you're not thinking, time to relax. You're thinking, let's see how bad this gets. First come the usual suspects. The bugs. Always the bugs. Fleas biting your ankles. Mosquitoes dive-bombing your ears. Lice trying to lay eggs in your scalp like it's real estate. You scratch and swat and roll and curse until your body aches worse than it did when you laid down. Still, you push through. Because maybe, tonight's the night your body gives up before the chaos starts. Then it begins. The heat rises. The air thickens. You toss. You turn. You sweat so much your mat turns into a sponge that sticks to your back like a second skin. Your eyelids flutter, your breathing slows, and then the dreams come. Except they're not dreams. Not here. They're visitations. You dream of things with too many eyes. Of animals with human voices. Of a shadow standing in the corner of your hut, watching, waiting, not moving, not blinking. You feel weight on your chest, so real it hurts. You try to scream, but your mouth won't open. You try to move, but your limbs are pinned down like you're being buried alive. Your heart is pounding, not in fear, but in warning. This isn't a dream. This is something else. You wake up choking, gasping for air, clawing at your linen, your own throat. You stare into the dark, wide-eyed, frozen, listening. Was that the wind? A jackal? A voice? You sit there for hours, knees to chest, whispering whatever protection spell you can remember from that one time you overheard the temple priest muttering to himself. You make deals with the gods. You promise to be better. You promise to leave more offerings. You promise anything, just for silence, for sleep. Eventually, exhaustion takes you. But it's not peaceful. It's not safe. It's a blackout. And if you wake up with the sun on your face, your heart still beating, your skin still intact, and no new bite marks, bruises, or vague sense that something touched you while you slept. That's a victory. You get up, groggy, hollow-eyed, stretching your limbs and silently thanking every deity you can name. Because you didn't scream. You didn't wake the whole family with your night terrors. You didn't run outside barefoot, convinced a demon was crawling down your spine. You didn't soil yourself from a vision of your dead uncle hovering over your bed whispering, "You forgot my funeral beer." You just slept. Kind of. Almost. And in ancient Egypt, that's the bar. That's the dream. One full night without terror, without sweat-soaked linen, without screaming like something just crawled out of the afterlife and tried to borrow your body. Not everyone makes it. Not every night. But when you do, you smile. You stretch. You look up at the rising sun and say, "Let's do that again tonight," knowing full well, you probably won't. We like to pretend ancient Egypt was golden. We picture gleaming temples, linen robes, gold jewelry glinting in the sun, and towering pyramids defying time. We imagine grace, elegance, eternal mystery. But that image, that story, that's for the paintings. That's what the tombs show you, not what life felt like. The truth is heavier, dirtier, hungrier. Because for the average Egyptian, the one not carved into temple walls or wrapped in luxury linen, life wasn't grand. It was a grind. A slow, exhausting, dust-choked crawl toward a finish line you didn't even get to cross. You were just dropped over it and buried in a shallow grave while the sun kept rising like nothing happened. You didn't build pyramids. You dragged the stones for them. You didn't read scrolls. You carried the papyrus. You weren't writing history. You were breaking your back, making sure the people who did had enough grain to eat while they did it. You were born into this, not chosen by the gods, used by them. You learned to walk, and then you learned to work. Maybe it was the fields, mud up to your knees, the sun slicing your neck open like a blade. Maybe it was hauling bricks, or grinding grain, or dying slowly in a copper mine with lungs full of sand and promises. Your hands blistered, your skin cracked, your bones ached by the time you were 12, and by 20, you looked 40. You didn't rise in status. You didn't break the cycle. There was no made it out story. There was just survived another day. And that was the bar. That was the goal. Food, if it wasn't moldy or full of sand, it was a good day. Water, risked crocodiles, parasites, and dysentery just to drink something that didn't smell like swamp breath and rot. Rest? A reed mat, a wall of buzzing insects, demons whispering in your dreams. You didn't rest. You paused. And still, you had to smile. You had to pray. You had to give thanks to gods who never lifted a finger while you bled under their monuments. You had to believe your suffering had meaning, that this life, this exhausting, brutal, sunburnt existence was just a test, a trial, a stepping stone to a better afterlife. Because without that belief, without the hope that maybe, just maybe, death meant something better, you'd lose your mind. So you left offerings, you wore amulets, you whispered spells and pressed charms into your children's hands, hoping it might be different for them, knowing deep down it wouldn't be. Because the system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. You were meant to suffer, quietly, obediently, and eternally. The pyramids, they weren't built to honor the people. They were built to bury them, layer by layer, stone by stone, body by body. So no, ancient Egypt wasn't all glory and gold. It was grit. It was pain. It was waking up every day wondering if you'd die from heat stroke or hunger or whatever thing just bit you in the dark last night. And when you didn't, that was a win. That was triumph. Because the truth is, if you were a peasant in ancient Egypt, the greatest thing you ever achieved wasn't fame. It was endurance. And if the gods were watching, they weren't impressed by your prayers or offerings. They were impressed that you were still alive. Let's be honest, you wouldn't make it. Not a day, not an hour. Drop your modern, comfort-coddled body into ancient Egypt, and it wouldn't be a heroic adventure. It'd be a meltdown. And not just metaphorically, literally, because you'd be sunburned, dehydrated, covered in bugs, and emotionally broken before breakfast. You wake up in your climate-controlled room on a memory foam mattress, wrapped in blankets that were spun in sterile factories and scented like lavender and privilege. Now swap that for a reed mat. On the dirt, crawling with fleas, wrapped in linen that hasn't been washed in 3 weeks and smells like sweat, smoke, and unprocessed trauma. No pillow, no blackout curtains. Just dawn exploding through a gap in the wall and a fly landing directly in your open mouth. That's how your day starts. And then you're working, not checking emails from bed working, not meetings and spreadsheets working. Real work, body work, life or death work. You're hauling water from the Nile in clay pots that weigh more than your dog. You're digging trenches in the sun with a wooden shovel that splinters mid-swing. You're grinding grain by hand until your fingers cramp and your shoulders feel like they're about to separate. No ergonomic chair. No coffee break. No HR department to file complaints with because the guy next to you is bleeding and no one seems to care. You're used to soap. They had ashes. You're used to toilets. They had buckets. You're used to showers. They had. Bathing in crocodile-infested rivers while hoping your soul doesn't exit through your feet. Hungry? You won't find a snack drawer here. It's sand-filled bread. Salted fish that smells like failure. And onions. So many onions, you start to wonder if taste buds were invented later. You won't have refrigeration, forks, or even a plate with your name on it. You eat with your fingers while sitting in a circle with 10 other people who haven't bathed in a month and are absolutely stealing your share. Thirsty? No filtered water. No fizzy soda. No oat milk latte. You get beer. Not the fun kind. Not the cold, crisp, Friday night kind. This is chunky, room temp barley soup in a cup. It's breakfast. It's lunch. It's survival juice. And God forbid you get sick. You can't take Tylenol. You can't call your doctor. You can't even Google what's wrong with you. You get a priest who smears crocodile dung on your rash and tells you to sleep facing the moon while whispering the name of a god you can't pronounce. And somehow that's your best option. Also, no toothbrush. Just a stick and a prayer. Your gums bleed. Your teeth hurt. You're 27 and already losing molars because all your food comes with a complimentary serving of gravel. Night falls. You want peace, silence, a little Netflix and chill. Nope. You get jackals howling outside your hut, snakes warming themselves in your bedding, and a spirit, possibly your dead uncle, sitting on your chest while you dream of things that don't make sense but leave you sweating and apologizing to gods you never meant to offend. And this is every day. There's no vacation. No treat yourself day. No scented candle that makes the scorpions go away. So next time you complain that the Wi-Fi's slow, the coffee's too bitter, or the AC is taking too long to kick in, just remember, in ancient Egypt, you'd already be sunburned, starving, slightly possessed, and on fire. And that was before noon. You had a rough day. Your boss was a tyrant. Your inbox was a war zone. The coffee was burnt. You stubbed your toe on the fridge. The train was late. Someone chewed too loudly next to you, and now you're doom scrolling through the apocalypse buffet that is the news. But take a deep breath. Pause. Because here's the good news. The one, undeniable, darkly beautiful consolation prize that life still has to offer. You are not in ancient Egypt. You didn't wake up on a bed of straw and beetles. You didn't drink warm, chunky beer for breakfast because the water might kill you faster. You didn't have to sprint to the river while looking over your shoulder for crocodiles, just to wash the lice out of your linen with water that gave you worms the last time. You're not squatting over a clay bucket, wiping yourself with sand and prayers. You didn't eat bread full of gravel that cracked your molar in half. You didn't fall asleep on a mat made of reeds and regret while fleas performed an interpretive dance on your spine. You didn't dream of being sat on by a ghost, or bitten by a jackal, or slowly possessed by an angry ancestor because you forgot to leave them garlic and beer last week. You didn't look death in the eye when you scratched your leg and wondered if the scab was infected or possessed. You didn't crawl into bed, wondering whether the sharp pain in your gut was dinner fighting back or the start of something spiritual. You didn't visit a doctor who thought the best course of action was to smear dung on the wound and whisper to the moon about it. You didn't lose a toe to sunstroke. You didn't cry into your grain ration because it came with an unexpected protein bonus, a beetle. You didn't have to pray to a cat statue in the hopes that Bastille would keep the rats out of your house because the rats are winning. And you didn't, thank the gods, die from looking at a snake the wrong way, or get peed on by a goat while trying to sleep, or get your name scratched out of your own tomb wall because someone thought you disrespected a spirit in your dreams. You didn't do any of that. You just had a bad day. You had access to running water, soap, painkillers, solid food, and a mattress not made of sticks and silent despair. You didn't get haunted, eaten, or sacrificed. You didn't smear moldy bread on your wounds and call it a cure. You didn't have to smile at the sun while it roasted you alive and told you to build a monument to someone who believed they were the sun. So yes, your day might have sucked. Your coffee might have been terrible. Your job might be slowly draining your will to live. But at least, and let's just say this loud for the folks in the back, you are not in ancient Egypt. You're not cursed. You're not infested. You're not bleeding from a tooth you can't afford to lose. You're not fighting off scorpions with a sandal while praying to 6 gods at once and hoping one of them answers your call. You are blessed with every quiet miracle of the modern world. So tonight, when you tuck yourself into your soft, clean, snake-free bed, smile, because no matter how bad today was, at least you didn't spend it in ancient Egypt. And that, truly, is something to celebrate.